Thanks for downloading the first episode of No Country for New Nashville's podcast series. Each time, host Brad Wilson sits down for an in-depth discussion with Nashville area artists. On this episode, Brad visits the home of singer-songwriter Brooke Waggoner.
Beyond stoked right now to be joined by one of my all-time favorite Nashville artists. Here in Nashville by way of Louisiana. Yeah. Has been doing, creating perfection piano pop for the last 7 years.
Thank you.
Last 2 years have been a whirlwind. Playing with Jack White in his touring band, the Peacocks, performing on his Grammy-nominated album, Blunderbuss, toured the world over for the last year, had stops at the Grammys, SNL, now finally getting back to her solo work with the critically acclaimed album, Originator, that was released in March of this year. Right. Now, through a special partnership with Bryncore, a new label that's just gotten started, on October 22nd, last Tuesday, she released her first live album called Sing to Me, live in Boston, which features a lot of the work that's in Originator, plus 2 exclusive unreleased tracks that have never been heard. She's talented, lovely, and probably has the huskiest voice you'll ever hear. I'm joined by Brooke Waggoner.
Thanks, Brad. That's so
nice. that was a little treat because for those of you who don't know, is that Brooke and I go back a long ways. And we actually haven't had a conversation like this in 5 years.
A long time.
Can you believe that? Since 2008.
Yeah.
And at that time, I was listening back to some of those work because I met Brooke back in my younger days when I was just a college kid at a radio station. I was a music director at a radio station and in 2007, and Brooke was gracious enough to come in multiple times for in-studio interviews, for phone calls, for love advice, whatever it was that was needed. So through that time, Brooke and I obviously became, BFFs, but, and I remember, the only reason why I mentioned your husky voice is because I remember specifically, I was listening to some of those old interviews, and I remember, an online zine or like a paper in Florida had mentioned, seeing your show was the thing to do, and it was because of your husky vocals. And so I was reflecting on that and, realizing, because husky is actually a raspy voice.
Right.
A whispered vocal tone. And so I remember having these conversations with you, contemplating it. When they're saying husky, are they referring to you being a manly guy?
Right.
Like a large boy,
right.
growing boy, or is it just this?
Wasn't there like a pants brand? Like a guy's, preteen brand called Huskies or something?
If there wasn't, there probably should be.
I should have had some of those on,
as we're kind of diving in, let's think of that. It's been 5 years. Over the course of the years, we definitely have connected. I remember I saw you at a screening of an Alfred Hitchcock film for How to Catch a Thief.
That's right. Yeah.
And the reason why that's not ringing bells because I actually didn't say anything when I saw you.
I was like,
how creepy was that? I was there's Brooke. But it was should I say something? I'm too lazy. We're watching movies.
That was a good night, though. I do remember the night. Yeah.
That's why you remember it so fondly. But no. So we've had opportunities to connect over the last few years, and that's been such a. It's such a huge thing for me because for me working in the music industry, this is such a pure example of why I'm in music, and being able to work with someone like you who, starting off when I wasn't doing anything, just as a college music director, you invested in me, and now there's been opportunities throughout the years for me to invest in you, and working on different projects in regards to college radio and different things like that. Yeah. And so to be able to kind of reconnect now is one of the huge delights. But looking back and thinking back on, man, how much has changed in 5 years, since 2008. I mean, like, first off, like, what have you been doing, since that time?
Well, I think I'm trying to think of the last time I did your radio show.
It was the day of the release of Heal for the Honey.
Yeah,
it was
which
the day
was
of the release show
my
at the
first full-length release.
Yeah.
And we had a ton going on in town for that. I did a lot of touring on that record, and then around the time I got engaged, I started writing my second full length, which is a much more orchestral, classical type record, called Go Easy Little Doves. And that year was a really just unique year in trying to promote such an orchestral record, difficult to tour. So we ended up doing a big filming at Charlie Peacock's art house. And really that year was just sort of centered around such a new thing I was biting off, just sonically. And and then pretty soon after that, I started working on the Jack White record, and we trucked for a long time on Blunderbuss. And then I agreed to go out on tour with him for a year for that album cycle last year. Yeah. And then kind of in the midst of tracking his record and in between touring, I recorded my latest album, Originator, and sat on that a little bit last year, and decided to put it out this year in March. So you're under like the heat lamp right now.
Yeah, exactly. I was like, what the heck was that? Because we're in Brooke's home studio right now, and there's a few things that I love about this. There's the classic drum set up for Brooke to wail anytime.
That's where my husband's department. He's just a mean.
Here's the thing about your husband. Number one, his name's Brad, which already makes him awesome. Yeah. Secondly, he's not afraid to wear double denim, And,
he's a layer guy. Yeah.
Exactly. And so, like, any guy who's not afraid to throw on a jean jacket.
He's kind of a Stetson man.
Yeah,
he
absolutely.
Really is. Yeah.
He's not a guy you want to get in a street fight in.
He's serious.
Let's just be honest about that.
Serious, yeah.
So we're at Brooke's home studio, and there's a lot of things that I do want to talk about that's happening in this room. At some point, we will be going through your movie collection. So
you mean every season of Friends, and then Carrie Russell's Felicity?
Yeah,
okay.
Exactly. So we'll talk about your thoughts on Lost. My favorite show of all time, Freaks and Geeks, is there. So that's already a huge point. But there's also
hang out in this area, the top shelf. It's truly a top shelf situation.
Yeah.
Like that's where kind of the
good
stuff.
Look, I think there's some big guns on the second shelf. I'm seeing
A Charlie Brown Christmas.
Yeah, I'm seeing The Wedding Singer.
Hook.
That's an absolute classic. I mean, we've got Ken Burns' Civil War documentary, which I own. Yeah, which is awesome.
It's good. It's good.
I'm trying to find some crucial, terrible movies that are here. But you're actually, I mean, there's Orange County, which is it's a Jack Black film.
It's really funny. I oddly watched that fairly recently.
Really? Wow. Colin Hanks. So yeah, I actually can't fault you. You've got all. Grey's Anatomy.
Okay, that's not mine.
okay. That's Brad's, right? That was.
It is. It is.
He's a big Grey's Anatomy guy?
He is. He's into that.
Yeah, I was actually hoping as I went through here to find some serious guilty pleasures, but I can't.
Yeah, I mean, let's see. There's there is like I don't think it's guilty, but there's The Little Mermaid.
No, it's classic.
Sleeping Beauty. Okay, I will say Troy. Sorry, that's an atrocious film. Yeah. I honestly hated that film.
The Brad Pitt.
I fell asleep. It's more of it's my husband's like.
Oh, okay. I mean, you've got
testosterone. Number.
I feel like you've got Jimmy. Oh, whoa! Wait a second. Silverchair's Diorama.
Right.
Tell me you're back this.
It's so good.
Whoa, okay, hold on. I'm gonna just
I get just so amped. Like everything about their music it's
Okay, if you're not familiar with this, Silverchair's Diorama is literally and I totally back this, is one of the best albums to come out, I feel like, in the last 20 years. Mm-hmm. And if you know Silverchair, it's most likely because of their early grunge work, which not to take away from this, but when they made this album, Diorama, which I believe was released in 2001, I want to say.
Yeah.
Stan, do you have a ability?
2002, 2001, yeah.
I think it's, you're pretty much correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Stan, my partner in crime / sound guy, has given me the okay that it was 2000, 2001. So we'll verify that later. But it's this incredible album where Daniel Johns, the main writer, composer for Silverchair, just made this ambitious album. I remember reading in the liner notes how, like, they made a point to say they used no auto-tune in the album. And that was the beginning of the relationships with working with the composer Van Dyke Parks, who's
a buddy.
Yeah.
He's a buddy of mine. Yeah, he's...
Wow, did I know that? Did I know that you were...
I don't know. He... okay, that might be a good segue into a story here. Okay. So I've been a huge Van Dyke fan for a long time. And I remember one of the first, like, interview / album reviews I got... I guess it was with the EP I put out like about 6 years ago. Somebody referenced Van Dyke, saying there's sort of like a similar quality in how you're approaching orchestration, and which to me was kind of the ultimate compliment, because I think he's just a mad scientist. Yeah. So I kind of set out on this quest to meet him and get to know him. And one of the guys I work with at a label in LA, we were chatting about kind of like icons and mentors and just sort of our dream meetings. And I mentioned Van Dyke, and he's like, oh, that's my neighbor. Like, literally, we're neighbors in Burbank.
No way.
I said, are you kidding me? So last time I was in LA, or the next time after he and I had talked about that, I was in LA, and he said, hey, I'm going to throw a little get-together dinner party. We'll have him over. Come hang out. So I did. I went. It was lovely and amazing. He gave me a copy of his whatever solo album he put out recently.
Oh yeah.
On vinyl. Showed up, lovely, sweet man. I still have his business card somewhere.
Wait, Van Dyke Parks gave you a business card?
Okay, and I gotta find it. Where is it?
Wait a second.
I don't know if I can shuffle around here. I don't know if I'm supposed to move, but I do have to find it for you. Let's see.
Take your time finding it. I'm just gonna look at some.
Keep perusing the goods there.
Exactly.
Oh, where did I? It's lovely. It essentially says, I apologize for anything I might have inadvertently said in my drunken stupor tonight when I give you my business card.
Wow.
No, I can't find it. It's somewhere. Anyway, he's lovely. He's about 4'10", just cute and tiny. And so we started chatting about projects, and we've actually been talking about doing something.
The obvious question is
so
how, because for people who don't know, Van Dyke Parks is one of the most legendary composers,
orchestrators. Yeah,
orchestrator,
totally.
known especially for his work with Brian Wilson. He wrote all the lyrics on the Smile album. And I remember I interviewed Brian, and it was the most awkward 10 minutes of my entire life. And it was because I remember it was right when this album, The Lucky Old Sun, came out, and I was asking all these like cliche like radio questions and like this great radio voice, and like saying, so hey Brian, that Lucky Old Sun's been out for a few weeks, what's the response been? And he just says, it's selling slowly.
Oh my gosh.
Dead silence.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay. And I was like, so, because he was playing the Ryman. So I was like, Brian, what can people expect from your show at the Ryman? And he says, that Lucky Old Sun and Beach Boys. Dead silence. Like, I was like, please give me something to work with. But the only time that he I remember him really coming alive was whenever we talked about like being able to work with Van Dyke again, and just how much he enjoys that. And so I guess that's the obvious question is, you guys are friends yet you haven't worked together already. How does this not happen?
Think I don't think it would be as much of a collaboration as more of a I'd want him to put some orchestrations on some songs or something, and which for me is a kind of a passing of the baton, if you will, because that's one of the things I get into most with my records. It's kind of the most fun part, the icing on the cake. So, but I'd love to get his spin on it. He just has such a unique, colorful sound that's just so indicative of what he does. So he's super cool. He's still just all about like meeting new, like younger talent and artists and kind of staying in that, in the scene or whatever, and he's 70, just holding it down in LA still. It's just so impressive. So
are you telling me that you would have a hard time, the fact that you do so much composing and orchestration, that would definitely would that be a hard thing for you to hand over?
No, I'd love to see what he could do with a couple of songs. It would be just the greatest honor. Like I just so respect his work. So
and that's kind of what his relationship has been with Silverchair, is that he did orchestration on 3 songs on Diorama, which to me that album is incredible because it fuses this very. It's very cinematic. It maintains a lot of their grunge elements, and but it's just got these really, really great songs. And then he worked with them again on Young Modern, which came out. Man, it's probably been 3 or 4 years now. I'm desperately hoping that they'll somehow put out a new album, or that Daniel Johns will. But so I haven't heard anything from them. But enough about Daniel. Who cares about him? But so we're at Brooke's house. She has an epic white picket fence that I was really impressed with. A great movie collection that includes Napoleon Dynamite, and we're talking about her illustrious musical career. She's been busy. She has a full length that came out in March, Originator, and then a brand new, her first ever live album. I'm just gonna jump back and forth. There's gonna be like I'm gonna talk about Originator. Next thing you know, I'm gonna talk about Napoleon Dynamite. In a few minutes, I'll talk about how I saw Coraline in the theaters by myself because nobody would go with me.
Oh my god!
And it's one of the most amazing movies ever.
It's so good. I love that movie. I think it's amazing.
So this is like, if you're cool with that, we're just gonna weave in and out.
Sure.
But as far as Originator, let's talk about that conception, because you put out Go Easy Little Doves in 2009, and that was inspired a lot by meeting your now husband, right, Brad, and getting married and kind of what that meant. And then with Originator, we're gonna mention, talk about some of the work you did with Jack over the last 2 years. But when it came time to work and do Originator, you brought in Chad Howitt to produce, who worked on the Fresh Pair of Eyes EP as well as Heal for the Honey, your first full length. He actually did not work on your second full length, Go Easy Little Dove. I remember talking to him about that, and I remember he was incredibly bummed. Like he was, because he's one of the most emotional, eccentric, awesome guys ever. But I remember talking to him, whenever I found out that you guys were working together again on Originator, and I said, Chad, like how did that came about? Like, you guys working together again? And I'm paraphrasing. He said something in the fact that you guys were talking on the phone about something, and he said that you asked him, who should produce my next record? And he said I should, I should produce that record. So I don't know if that's how it went, but
basically,
yeah. I mean, let's make up a grander story than that. So let's say this. Like, I don't know if you remember, like when Chad, he was diagnosed with cancer in 2010.
Oh, right.
And so he went through chemotherapy when he was, when he was in the hospital. I remember him saying to me, man, one of the things I really aspire to do is if I could just produce one more Brooke Waggoner.
It was a bucket
record.
list.
Yeah,
thing.
that was kind of one of the big things. And that was kind of, you guys had that huge falling out.
Yeah.
The year prior.
It was time to let bygones be bygones.
Yeah.
We can do this.
Yeah.
And we did it, in the hospital. We just recorded the whole thing.
That album straight to analog tape.
It's wrong on so many levels.
Yeah, exactly. I'm so ashamed of myself right now. But let's talk about that. So you did Go Easy Little Doves on your own.
I did that alone. I wanted to do that alone. Yeah, that was a really special time and record for me, personally and with my career. I made that record for me. That was it. I knew it wasn't very marketable. This is a tough thing to tour, to make it happen. I don't care. Like sometimes I just don't care. Sometimes it's, you just need to go make something and just go make it, you know? So I think if you know that going into it, you can work within your own parameters for that. But it was the right record for me to produce because it's from the cloth I was cut from sonically and just kind of my world prior to getting to Nashville. Because I lived in a really different world before I got here. You know, it was very...
Well, yeah, what was that like?
Just a really classical scene. I grew up doing classical piano. I was going to go the performance route and try to make that happen, which is just so hyper competitive.
You were classically trained through college, right?
Yeah, started age 4 doing the whole thing all the way through college. But when I got to college, I knew I didn't. At that point, I knew I don't want to perform someone else's music from 100 years ago for a living. I love it. I appreciate it. I don't want to just interpret. I want to create and write. And so I got really into composition, thinking I'd go the film scoring route. Really immersed in that. But at the same time, it's college. It's exciting. You're discovering all these new things, and got really into the local band scene at the time, and just was like feeling torn and kind of, man, I just love both so much. They're so different, really different headspaces. One's really heady and the other is just whatever you feel, like go for it. So moving to Nashville was very not in the plan, kind of unexpected. So when I got here, I wanted to kind of create a hybrid of both of those things.
Because you were considering a few other places before Nashville. Weren't you considering Austin for a time? Or
that was a brief time. Prior to that, I was really thinking New York or LA. Okay. And at the time, I was straight out of school and no job, no money. And I thought, I just can't cut it. I can't swing it there. Yeah. Like, it's too expensive. Yeah. So Austin and Nashville suddenly became very palpable because you can live a decent life and not feel the weight of, that kind of economic climate. So, we were passing through Nashville on a spring break my senior year in college to see friends, and I really liked it here. And I gave myself like 2 years. I was like, just show up and see what you can make of it, and then you'll probably move on. And that was over 7 years ago. So
coming back to this record, Originator, why because it was actually Chad Howitt was produced, but also Daniel James was co-producer on that. So Chad Howitt from his band Paper Route, incredible band, and then Daniel James from Cannon Blue. How did it happen, bringing Chad back on board and then also getting Daniel?
Well, I was getting ready to make a new record and had a few different people in mind. I kind of wondered if Chad and I would ever work again in that context. It sort of seemed like the EP and the full length was really special back in the day, and maybe that's it, we were both really busy with touring and all kind. Paper Route was doing their thing, and I just kind of wondered if it was ever going to make sense again. Yeah. And I did. I got a call out of the blue from Chad, and we were catching up, and it literally did ask, like, hey, I've got some guys in mind to produce. What do you think? And
wait a second. Whenever I initially said that, you looked at me like that was like, oh, there was no way that's how that actually took place.
That's true.
So we were just talking that whole story about he's dying, he's on his deathbed. And
that's not true. But so we were chatting, and I just said, I'm wanting to make something. It's been a couple years. I've got a few different people in mind, and it was kind of gearing the conversation, but it did feel very kind of a natural coming together again in a cool way. So in fact, I don't even know if he made that pitch on the phone. I think I got an email from him later that night or something, but it was really great. And just, hey, this all makes sense timing. And I think it could be really cool. So we met up, grabbed coffee, talked about it. And then I can't remember how it transpired, but maybe a day or two later, he texted and said, hey, I think we should maybe bring in Dan, and Dan was a friend of mine, and I really respect his music so much. And it was a great idea. We actually worked really well together. So
now the idea, because I'm a huge analog nerd. You can't a huge geek for vinyl and that sort of analog warmth. You had never recorded analog personally for your own projects, right? Before
right, right. So the timing of that was interesting too, because I was already in the middle of making my record when I got the call from Jack as well to go track at Third Man, which is like analog paradise. Yeah. So the timing of all that was sort of just synonymous and kind of really random, the way that it all collided. So it was just thrilling to be in so many spaces where it felt so heavily based on performance. That was really cool. So,
but with Chad and Daniel, correct me if I'm wrong, but as far as production work that they've done as well as being artists, had either one of them actually recorded analog before? Mm-mm. So were you a little afraid? Like, are these guys going to be able to? Are they going to get it?
No, because Chad had a really good idea about where to do that, and we did it at Welcome to 1979.
Okay. Yeah.
And there's built-in Chris Mara is great. He owns and runs the place and really knows his craft. And he was there every step of the way, kind of guiding. And, it was just this learning process for all of us. And so it was Chad's initial idea to do analog. I hopped on board.
Wow.
And we all just jumped in. I think we all were really craving something we didn't understand fully. It was really important to do that. Yeah. So.
Well, and it actually makes sense, with Chad, because the whole aesthetic of Paper House, they're always wanting to push their limitations. They're always wanting it to make things harder, per se.
Well, I think any band or artist that does this for a living after so many records, you need that and want that. That is the goal. Yeah.
Do you think, especially because you recorded with Jack and analog as well, are you converted to the point where like, hey, I'm analog for the rest of my career, or is it something that?
No, it just depends on. Yeah. It depends on your budget and
Yeah.
what you're doing. My first record, I didn't have the budget for analog. I just did. It's more expensive. Yeah. It's simple math now, and so, I think it could be whatever you want it to be. Yeah. You can get as snobby as you want about whatever, but you can still make limitations as the performer. Even if it's digital, you can say, we're not auto-tuning, we're not splicing and cutting, and I'm not going to do 500 takes on this. It's one take. You can still do that digitally. It might be more tempting and easier to get in there and hack it up, but you can still create those confines.
So what did you feel like? Because I just love that, considering especially both Daniel and Chad have had a long history of recording stuff in their bedrooms, on their laptops. So for all three of you guys to have this sort of new experience together, like what did they bring to the album? Like each one specifically, like what did they bring that maybe wasn't there on Go Easy Little Doves?
Well, it was nice to kind of be in a collective setting. So. Just having guys that are coming at music from all different spheres, Dan and I connect a lot on the orchestral side of things. We both kind of geek out on some of the same classical stuff. And then he sort of bridges that gap with his love for electronic music with Chad and I. And then Chad's such a band guy. So you're getting all these great hats that everybody wears. And I'm just such a solo piano purist when it comes to that. I learned from just reading music on sheet music. So for me, that's my approach, and it's just we're really different, and yet there's this thread of what we all connect to emotionally. So that was just really important. I think it felt very collective. But I also, when I make a record, I have a really strong sense of what I want to achieve. So I think that helps a lot. I can go in and really know, this is what I want to say. I'm not looking to be fully shaped. I just want some finessing.
Yeah.
You know.
Going in, did you know that you wanted to step away from the orchestration a little bit? Because
I wanted to get back to. I wanted drums. I wanted more of a band feel. I chose to do brass and woodwinds because I'd done so many strings on everything else I'd made in the past. So that was my confine.
Yeah.
Like, this is sort of new sonic territory for me. I just wanted to try my hand at that.
And the thing that I love about the album is it's not just you playing it safe. It's not you repeating yourself, doing what you've done before. There's some, of course, it's a Brooke Waggoner record. It's going to be cinematic. It's going to have those fragile moments. But I also notice, with the horns, with the woodwinds, it created, like in the first single from the album, which I believe was Rumble. It's almost a little bit brash, and you kind of pushing your vocals a little bit to, a little more aggressive than what you're usually used to. Was that intentional to try to put
very
yourself out
much?
there
I had a few things I really wanted to achieve on that record that I felt like I'd not hit yet.
Yeah.
One of them being vocally getting just more comfortable in my own skin, and really pushing and trying out new things and higher energy, because I have kind of my singing voice is sort of thin and it feels sort of limited, but I really wanted to push myself. And I think the other piece to that was playing with timing. So a lot of the stuff I'd done in the past was kind of 4 or 5 6-minute pop songs, which never happens. You have that 3.5 minute rule, so this record I went the opposite. Rumble's like barely 2 minutes.
Absolutely.
So I wanted to see how much I could cram into a tight space and kind of help the listener not be aware of time. That was the goal. And
then obviously one of the secondary goals had to be to record a video at the country's largest treehouse, right?
Yeah, that was...
how much did that treehouse shape the sound of the record?
Oh, right, yeah.
that's one of
the visual inspiration.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Good. Okay, so Brooke, now I want to tell you, because I remember seeing you perform at Grimey's, best record store in the country, for the release, and I picked the vinyl and listening to it, and as a music listener, as I was going through that experience, like the initial impressions were, man, this is really good. It was an exciting listen. There wasn't it was great, but for me, what really came alive was the back half of the album.
Oh.
That was really kind of like the goosebumps sort of moments, and there was 3 specific moments that did that for me that I want to talk to you about. Was Parish. Had this incredible a cappella outro. It literally sounded like it belonged in the most heartbreaking moment in a Wes Anderson film. To me, as a music listener, that really wrecked me, because it caught me off guard that the song took this 180 like that.
Yeah.
And so that was one moment I want to talk. That I want you to talk about. A second moment is in Wellspring. Again, it has another great outro with these absolutely heartbreaking, like soul crushing horns that are so sort of desperate. They almost sounded to me something out of like Bjork's Selma songs, like if you're familiar with that album, just really emotional sort of horns, and I say that because that was an emotion that I hadn't experienced with one of your albums before.
Yeah.
And then this really And then this track, Mixin' with the Birdies, which is this very short song, very produced song, but
it's just an old work tape.
Yeah.
That song is like very old, recorded years ago, literally on like a little tiny home recording device.
Really?
Yeah. So none of that actually is produced. It's all very pieced together from this just little things around from years ago.
I love
just for
that.
fun.
I love that.
It was something special. We were going to recreate it, and then we all just agreed, like, the emotion's already there.
Yeah.
Let's, kind of run it through this old tape filter and be done.
Yeah, it sounded so creaky and honest, and like something that you just really don't get on tape a lot. So with those two songs, with Parish and Wellspring, with those two outros, like take me through like what's whose ideas were that to bring in the a cappella singers at the end? Was that something that was taught, like you had in mind beforehand, or did that come out of discussions?
I feel like it's specifically in Parish, that choir moment.
Yeah.
It's been a couple years now. I think originally we were going to have piano underlying that.
Yeah.
And then it was just so magical we tracked this choir live. So there was a really sweet emotion in that. And we all just kind of agreed this makes sense to be a cappella. As sort of an end cap to such a high intensity song. And then on Wellspring, interesting story on that song. It was originally written in a much more like piecier fashion. Okay. So it was going to start off with just kind of this typical piano ballad intro. We get into the song, and then it takes a 180 like a lot of my writing does, and goes into this really kind of high energy chant, like kind of four to the floor moment.
Yeah.
Had all this other brass stuff going on. It just didn't pull off. And it was the first song that we tracked with brass live. So I'm on keys, Jeremy's on drums in the back, I've got Brent on bass, I've got a 5-piece brass section all in the room, and it's the first song we tracked of the record. So because of that, the opening half is really strong and solid. We just didn't have the intensity I wanted in post later. I just felt like it wasn't there. And so I lived with it and sat with it for a while and decided, let's just isolate some brass and just have that like ringing out. So it was not intentionally written to have that feeling. It morphed with the making of the record.
So those horns were already in the song, and was it something where you just soloed the horns?
Yeah,
out?
and I even, to kind of make it all make sense, I rewrote the opening verses and chorus. So the song literally did a 180 in the recording process, which I don't normally do. Normally I go in with really solid, these are the songs, this is how they work. But that just needed to happen. So, which is so exciting. When you're making a record, you kind of learn when to roll with it, when it's not working, and when you should morph, in real time.
Well, that's so I'm glad you said that, because and this is something that I'm curious about, is musically throughout your entire career, you've always been, like your kind of MO, your calling card is this very lush sort of musically very lush, very emotional, beautiful, orchestrated these pop songs, these great songs. They're obviously very romantic, but something I noticed is that lyrically it seems you're a bit more ambiguous, opting to use lyrics as more of a vehicle to paint an emotion rather than tell a story in like the traditional singer-songwriter fashion. Now is that like, is there a hesitance to expose yourself too plainly, or is that just merely a reflection of how you've approached music as a composer?
Yeah, lyrics are interesting for me. a lot of the songs that I love are way more on the nose. Like, I have no problem with that as a listener. But when I write, I don't know why, I find that for me incredibly boring.
Yeah.
Like that approach of like where it's obvious. I always want to take some angle that in my mind I feel like has never been taken, you know? And so to really dig in there, but also keep it abstract.
Yeah.
So, and on this particular record, I wanted to get more overt. I really wanted to kind of remove the veil a little bit and just get more intentional there. But I love poetry. I actually really get into that. And so I like the idea of really understanding what you are trying to convey emotionally in the message and not just leaving it too ambiguous, but maybe not giving away all your cards every time. That's important to me to like strike a balance.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So would you say, like, looking back on this is your third full length, you know, the first one, Heal for the Honey, Go Easy Little Doves, and now Originator, and we'll talk about the live album in just a moment, but, you know, reflecting back on those 3 albums, are there like specific experiences that you tie to each one?
To each album or to...
Yeah, to each album, like certain moments, like whether it be like you as a person, like a certain moment in time.
It's always a turning point for me. Yeah. That's when an album happens, and it's never, you know, the goal. It just, when I look back, I have very separate, intense memories for each one, you know. So, yeah, I mean, the EP for me was this, I'm starting my life. Yeah. The first full length I did was a very tumultuous time personally, but a really exciting time occupationally. So that was a really weird roller coaster year of incredible things happening with my career, but really tough things going on personally. Yeah. And then Go Easy is very much just this, I want to build in some protection right now. Like, I'm not in this mood to get incredibly like sherry with everybody. Just newly married and really experiencing this kind of closed off nest feel. And then with Originator, I think that's me getting back to just a new place in life. I feel like I experienced a lot of growth. I'd been married a few years at that time and was really trying to figure out how to do family and such a weird job, to be honest. A job that demands a lot of you and requires a lot of traveling and sacrifice, and really looking at some hard questions and trying to figure out, especially as a female, can I do it all? You know, I want to have kids one day. I was thinking a lot about that, and also having friends, just a lot of friends. I feel like the last few years have been fraught with just so much divorce. Wow. I'm just seeing it everywhere, honestly. And a lot of that record's about that too. Like, just thinking on those things a lot, you know? So there's stories. A lot of the songs are about specific people. Yeah.
So when you, as a music listener, do you tie like, you know, for me, as I listen to things, like there's certain albums or certain songs where like, whenever I listen to them, it literally like takes you like back to that exact moment. You know, like, you know, or like, you know, for me, even like the cliche things, you know, like there's certain songs that I listen to where like I'll literally, every time I listen to it, will feel like the queasiness in my stomach when I get dumped, you know, for the first time, or get my heart broken for the first time, you know, like things like that. And for me personally, that's like one of the things that I absolutely love about music the most, is this ability that no matter how long it's been, like a song can take you back to the moment. Like you can remember smells that, you know, like you had, or, you know, like they're tied so closely to like a specific moment in time. Like as a music listener, like how, is that, do you have moments like that? Are there songs like that for you, or approaching music growing up from a classical standpoint? Is it something else?
Well, yeah, I do have those moments. For me, when I'm writing or sort of wanting to just have fun with music again, as dorky as it sounds, I do play classical music. That's kind of my safe zone of that world's interesting. You don't have to be cool. You don't have to make it this thing. You show up and it's about something else entirely. It's just this mind warp, the music is so hard.
Yeah.
Like, it's really difficult music.
Absolutely.
And that complexity to me is where the mystery lies. So that kind of unlocks a lot of creativity for me. If I'm having like writer's block or something where I really want to just scratch everything, I'll play classical music, and that feels really nostalgic too. There's a purity in that. But yeah, I mean, there's like, I don't know if I listen to like John Bryan or the Rosebuds or something like that, I'm instantly 18 again.
Yeah.
And I love it.
Give me a specific moment where a song like takes you back. You don't mind sharing? Like, give me an experience that a song takes you back.
Well, there's some Elliott Smith songs that are I'm 19 years old and I'm deciding I don't want to do classical music. I want to make records.
Yeah.
Like, those are moments, and feeling like he's right there with me and an old friend who understands whatever that feeling is.
Yeah.
Like, you create kind of a misunderstanding.
Yeah.
There's something weird about that with musicians or music lovers. Yeah. We all secretly feel misunderstood, but I think we want to be misunderstood.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a weird,
Totally.
You sit in it and you love it.
Yeah.
You feel set apart.
Yeah.
So it's that feeling.
Is there like, so what's 5 albums you can't live without?
Ooh. Desert Island, right?
Yeah, it can be. That's we talked about. Yeah, we talked about it before. Like, because there's a distinction here, because we're getting into like intense territory. And I'm not talking about 5 favorite albums of all time. I'm not even
5 that I just could not live without.
Yeah, so it kind of bridges the gap between, the Desert Island albums and your favorite albums. It's kind of like, at the end of the day, if it didn't matter what was considered cool or whatever, like, what are the albums that get you through the day?
Carole King, Tapestry. She just gets me.
Yeah. For good reasons. She's one of the best songwriters of all time.
She's amazing, and she's cool. I don't know. It's I don't know. It's early 70s music, but that feels really good to me. And I grew up on Mary Tyler Moore, so that all kind of is like synonymous for me. Simon and Garfunkel, honestly, like those lyrics are some of the most just old friends for me.
Absolutely.
Like just very, it's just they know me, I know them. It's that close. Probably Sounds of Silence.
Oh, wow.
Probably my favorite, actually.
That's actually a pretty bold choice.
It is.
I back it.
I don't know.
I'm bookends is kind of like where like my heartbeat is. Like, I can remember the first time I heard the bookends theme, like, in just like that simple guitar. Like, I remember like literally like I definitely was like tearing up at the time, because it like really like it like hit me at like an emotional like moment where I was like not sure what was happening, and this song that was so turbulent yet so beautiful like, at the same time, like all in. Okay, so we got Sound of Silence, Carole King's Tapestry.
Probably. Oh man, they're kind of cheesy, but they're so fun. I think ELO for me is still.
Oh yeah.
That's like a kid, and my dad was a big fan, and something about like all the studio albums, a band that's mostly made and created in a studio, like just loving to record together. That's that's interesting to me.
And Roll Over Beethoven, their version, had a huge impact on you.
Yeah, right? Yeah, I mean it's really fun. I think they made like 11 studio albums. Maybe Out of the Blue is my favorite.
Okay. Which is
Mr. Blue Sky.
Yeah, I mean that song alone.
Oh my gosh.
You could
it's just
play
fun.
it.
It's just fun. It's all just fun. He can't really sing, and that makes it even more fun.
Oh, absolutely.
Talk is just a big one. Like Spirit of Eden and Laughingstock are so. It's when I heard them, it's like the music I'd been trying to find my whole life. And suddenly it was this like in the best sense of the word, it was like a great mix of like jazz. The Miles Davis influence is obviously there, but it's still kind of rock and roll, but beautiful. It's pre Anthony and the Johnsons, which is probably my fifth album because I'm a huge Anthony fan. But Mark Hollis has that quality, and they're British, and the Brits are just better at music usually. So those two, I could put those two Talk albums on repeat forever and be happy. And my fifth one would be Anthony, actually. Yeah. His first record, I am a bird now, I think I am Bert, something like that. But the whole thing is just about him wanting to be a lady. And when I first heard it, I just thought...
Really resonated with you?
I loved how honest it was. And he didn't take it from like this kind of weird rock and roll Bowie, tranny, like, which I love. I love Bowie as well. But it was so sad. He captured that, like, the torture that he lived in. And so I just never heard anything that sad. I still love it. I think he has the coolest voice. Yeah. He just seems like a beautiful person.
I'll be honest. I'm not a huge Anthony Johnson.
I know. It's a love-or-hate thing. It's very...
I think I'm just underexposed, and so this will be a good time to sit down on the record, get really sad,
the first one,
think about being a woman for a while. No,
it's just so genuine though. Exactly, he's not trying to do like a Rocky Horror Picture Show or something. It's just very. This is something I really deal with, you know. So absolutely. I appreciated that transparency.
So let's talk. Let's talk about your live album that just came out last Thursday. It's called "Sing to Me" live in Boston. Most of the tracks are made up of the Originator album, but you do have two unreleased tracks. One a cover.
One is a cover, yeah.
Now, and it's an interesting choice. I want to talk about that because you think of live albums, and there's it's not totally uncommon for somebody to throw in like an epic cover song. Probably a song that they played. Like people think, you need to record that song. Yeah. I'm wondering if this was the route that it took because you covered a 1940s tune, "Whispering Grass" by the Ink Spots. So I can't imagine that there was people like coming up to you after shows saying, "Man, like I'd love to hear your rendition."
Well, that's why I chose it. I don't do cover songs. Yeah. I feel very intimidated by them. Yeah. Like, first of all, at a live show setting, I take myself way too seriously. So I'm not that artist or band that comes in and like, let's just have fun. Yeah. Like, it's way too like serious. But I don't know. I love, it's actually, it's a father-daughter duo that wrote the song. Okay. Fred and Doris Fisher. Yeah. They were kind of dynamic writing duo in the late 30s, early 40s. And the Ink Spots were, it's like a quartet, this kind of, it's these four African-American guys. And they have like a really intense formula to every song they do. So that's usually about 2.5, 3 minutes long. Yeah. Very sweet. There's the same walk up on the introduction. They always have a little spoken word section, like pre-rap or something. That's kind of how it feels. Yeah. Like the bass singer says this little monologue and then they go back into the chorus. And I love the Ink Spots. I think they have this really cool sound. They're a little lesser known. And that song, I thought was just super cool the first time I heard it. Yeah. A friend of mine who lives in Brooklyn made me this kind of like mixtapey thing or whatever and had a really cool remix of that song. It's the first time I ever heard it. And I was like, hey, this is incredible. And my rabbit trail, started to extend. And the lyrics are just perfect. Like the message is really important. It's very strong. It's just keep your mouth shut, quit telling secrets. Like, don't do anything that's going to damage somebody else, and it's all in that metaphor of nature, even whispering, the trees are going to hear and they'll whisper, and that's what wind is. And it's this whole kind of nature metaphor, and you can't control it. The second you say it, you can't control it.
Now don't you tell it to the breeze, 'cause she will tell the birds and bees, and everyone will know because you told them once before. Yeah, you told them once before. It's no secret anymore.
So there's something really cool
heavy,
about
yeah.
it's just be discreet, you know.
Yeah.
And so I thought this will be nice because the freedom that comes in a cover it's not so precious. You can just kind of have fun and sing a song.
Yeah, totally.
And I just love that song. And so what's been cool is to talk about them every night at shows and connect with fans after who are like, you know, I've heard of them, I've heard of the Ink Spots, or I'm gonna have to go check them out.
Yeah.
And trying to kind of pay homage to something that's been forgotten, you know, that's important.
Has there ever been have you ever felt compelled to do a take on more of a modern, you know, song before? Has it ever, like, you know,
well, it's
one of those
interesting
artists
you
that
asked that
about?
because there is going to be this a bunch of artists and bands involved, but there's this compilation coming out early next year, and it's all cover songs.
Okay.
So I recorded mine 2 weeks ago.
Oh wow! What's the song? You got to tell us.
This is a major 180. I don't
Okay.
know if you're ready for this.
Okay.
Polly by Nirvana.
Whoa!
Yeah.
Wow!
Total 180.
Yeah.
Like it's I don't know why. I don't know. Like well, Brad's like huge Nirvana Pearl Jam guy, and that's very near and dear for me. I was, you know, like junior high when
Yeah.
I was, you know, flannel grunge. So I was a little young, but have really intense memories of
Yeah.
it. Man, that music is still just incredible. It's just so
Yeah.
good, and the angst that it creates, it's amazing. And I really wanted to do something that seemed obscure for me, but it's still a great
Yeah.
song. It's just it's dark.
So is the compilation all Nirvana tracks? or-
No,
Oh, wow.
we just pick whatever cover we want. So that's what I wanted to do.
That's so you got the contrast of this 1940s sort of standard, Whispering Grass, and then Polly. This
Well, and then I did. There was a really great nonprofit called Rock for Justice, and it's kind of a similar thing. A compilation album came out earlier this year with covers, and I did a Bowie song.
Which track?
I'm blanking. Life on Mars.
Oh, amazing
Really
song.
hard song. It's like one of my top
Yeah.
5 favorite songs,
Yeah.
but it's super hard.
Yeah.
And I knew I couldn't pull off the showmanship of Bowie with that, so I chose a really kind of sluggish, sadder, slower organ approach. So it's just very chill.
Oh, that's great.
But I just love the song. So you never know.
Yeah. So okay. So this live album that's out. Why a live album now? You've never. This is your first one.
Yeah. I know the Burn Corps guys. I've known them a couple years now. We've talked about doing this for a while. And when I got the recordings back from, it's a show that I was on tour with Ron Sexsmith at the time, and back in April, and we did a show in Boston, and I got the recording back. It just sounded good.
Yeah.
It did, and I don't feel that way usually about live music, so I just really wanted to do it, and I knew it was just going to be a digital release only. We weren't dealing with packaging and all that. It was just these special recordings we wanted to make accessible, mostly to my fan base, you know, the people who loyally support. I just wanted to do it as kind of like an end of the year, end of the album cycle, you know, here's the live slant on what we've been promoting all year. So
Yeah. How's I know it's been out just under a week.
Yeah.
How's the response been so far?
It's been good. We've gotten some good press, good album reviews. I don't know. It's been another way to connect with the people that support, and bringing in some new listeners, and it's been good. You know, you're constantly trying to monetize those streams, so it's kind of
yeah, exactly.
it's good. Yeah, but it's being listened to, and that's most important to me.
So I'm joined by Brooke Waggoner, new first live album available now. It's called Sing to Me, live in Boston. So I do want to talk briefly about the Jack White thing, and it's unavoidable. It just kind of has to be discussed because it was such a big. I think it was such a huge thing. The story goes, you got a call to play at some sessions. You didn't know who it was. You found out that it was for Jack's album that he was recording, and then from that time, it organically sort of built into this opportunity to join this all-girl touring group. Correct? That was backing him up, and so you toured with him for basically a year straight, right? For the for
about a year.
And got to experience some really massive things. Touring all over the world. Playing the Grammys on this unbelievable, blue baby grand,
So
playing
cool.
SNL. Like, as somebody, what was like? Obviously, the experience was great, but like, how did that, like, to go from what you were doing, which was pretty more intimate but steady, to go to something on such a larger scale?
Right.
Like, was that sort of a shock to your system? What was that whole experience like?
I think
for you?
it was at first, especially the touring side. The recording tracking side was just really magical. Jack has such a great setup for that. It just feels very special and conducive to like a bunch of people building chemistry and recording that chemistry. So that was amazing. And I was already a huge fan of his work and his work ethic and approach. And so to just play a part and have that kind of immortalized, on a recording was really special. The touring side came a little bit later and was somewhat unexpected. And that was a shock early on. I mean, our first show ever was SNL,
Wow.
So just, it was from that moment, you're kind of hanging on, like just hanging on, but it was amazing. It was such a fun kind of wild ride. It is such another level, it's rock star world. It's just this, it's a 180 from my normal life, so.
Yeah. And so, going from this 12 months of touring, like you said, that rock star, going from the SNLs, the Grammys, you'd never been in the Grammys before, and now you're performing on this one of the hallmark sort of Grammy performances, and to go from that whole whirlwind to kind of settle back into what you were doing in your own project, playing smaller crowds on a smaller scale. If you're honest, 100% honest, was that a little bit of a letdown to go back to?
No, honestly, it wasn't. Because I can really compartmentalize. Like, what I'm doing is just a very different thing.
Yeah.
That expectation of the level that Jack's at is just so... I've never seen my work and my music being that. For me, it's much more... it's going to be slower. It's organic. It is a little bit more intimate. Yeah. That's something that's important to me. And I feel like that's where I fit into the fabric of it all, So, yes, I want to grow, of course, as a musician, but there's just so many levels between that and then, a Jack White world tour kind of thing, So I think what that world demands of you as a writer, an artist and performer it's a lot. I don't know that I'd be equipped for that as the face for that. I have so much mad respect for what Jack is juggling. I like my world for my stuff. It's a world I got to create, and I have people that support it, and it's growing. And
is it growing? Is it growing fast enough for you? Are you where you want to be right now?
Yeah, because it's sustainable. It's not just that plug and play fast, let's cash in while we can trend. I'm not really interested in that. I think there was an early formative time where we were trying to figure out, is that what this is? Or is this going to be more of the grassroots approach? And I think that's what I do, and I can I just really approach it like a small business, and I look at it like that. And this is something that is sustainable now, 6 years in, and that's really exciting to say, because it takes a lot of money to get something like that off the ground.
Absolutely.
So to start recouping and seeing this, like, be something that's very real and tangible and not trend based is very important to me.
Yeah.
I just want to keep delivering solid music and product and connecting with people that connect with that. And so I do think that's going to be slow. It is slow. But you have moments of gasoline, and you try to learn when that's happening and how to capitalize. And then, but I get to make music for a living.
Yeah.
I have no complaints.
Yeah.
I just don't. I'm just really grateful.
So if this is, because that's kind of been your story, throughout the last 7 years, you've made this incredible music, and you've kind of constantly either been on the cusp of exploding, but it's never quite gone over to the other side, like critical acclaim, but not quite indie darling. You've had this devoted fan base, like you said, it's sustainable. If this is as big as Brooke Waggoner gets, are you content?
Yeah, I don't care about that stuff. That's the second you get in that world, you're just never happy. So you be really careful about what your goals are with that kind of thing. I don't want what I do to hinge on if some magazine thinks it's cool. Yeah. That's ridiculous. I want to make something that lasts, where it's just a part of the bigger picture of everybody trying to make music, but something that's gonna remain. I always try to make something that I feel would be classic. Yeah. Like, can this hold its own in 10 years from now? Like, I don't want to make just some goofy, hipster electronic record. Yeah. I don't care about that stuff. Like, that's great. That's what they do. That's not what I do. Yeah. I'm not going to try to morph into that. I'm just going to keep doing what I do, you know? So I'm, earning a living from that. It's just amazing.
I mean, that's really actually a refreshing, perspective, the idea of being content, while striving at the same time, evolving while, totally sustaining, those sort of kind of complex ideas. And so, I guess finally, what's next for you? You put out this live album, but what's for the next year, the end of the year, what's happening with you?
Right now I'm learning a bunch of Johnny Cash music.
Oh wow! Uh-oh. For a specific project, or
yeah, it's just this. There's a big tribute thing coming out for him next year, and I'm playing along with some of the band, and we're that's a fun side hat moment. I've got a few shows in November. I'm winding down for the year with promoting the record and doing that, but then I'm getting ready to I'm signing a deal with a label in Beijing, actually. Really? Mm-hmm. So we're focusing a lot of energy and time next year in Asia. So that's really where I'm thinking, that's where my mind's at now.
Ever have any desire to, because you've done everything on your own terms up to this point, have you ever had a desire to take something like that on? Or it sounds like, based on what we just talked about, that you're pretty content with the model you have in place. Is that true? Yeah,
well, this is a good label that this is very realistic, very artist friendly. They put out obscure American releases, and there's some real support there. And I think I'm secretly Asian anyway, so it kind of makes sense.
Okay, yeah. You always...
I'm the Irish version of an
you always
Asian,
gave off the Asian quality about you. And I would always tell people, I was like, man, like, what is it about? And people...
Oh, right. Yeah. So I'm really excited about it. A new country, new people. I've already got some really intense fans over there, so I'm excited to get over there and just start working it. So
would it be an idea of just re-releasing the content that's already out?
That is the idea.
For new material. Okay,
that's what we're doing.
Now, okay, so I know we're wrapping up, and I'm really conflicted right now. There's two routes that we can go. We just had this really kind of sobering moment, kind of reflecting on where you're at as an artist. And, we can end it there and it'd be awesome. Or we could talk about tell James Vanderbeek. like those are the two options that we're faced with.
I don't know if I want to give Dawson the final say here.
We're up in the bedroom, windows open, like ladders out, like what's, it's
Katie Holmes is being cute and kind of whiny.
So I don't know. Maybe I want to tell this story. Maybe we edit this in to another point or whatever. But because I do love what you were talking about in terms of being content and where you're at. I think that might be a good place to end that. So Stan, maybe we'll edit this in or whatever. But I do want to tell this story because it's incredible on about a million different levels.
Oh wow!
And the story is, if you're working for any press, it's how James Vanderbeek ruined my career. That's the story we're about to tell right now, and how much truth is in that statement? Zero. But so let's tell America, tell the world that's listening, how Dawson Leary shattered your career.
Well, oh my gosh, this is so ridiculous. No, there was a Lifetime made-for-TV movie, Taken in Broad Daylight, which is based on a true story about a woman who gets
loses her daughter, maybe?
No, like she herself, she's like a teenager. Okay. She's coming out of I really think she's coming out of Walmart, the actual Walmart, getting into her car in broad daylight. And she's taken.
Hold on.
James Vanderbeek.
I'm going to have to process this. Hold on a second. And the name of the movie was called?
Taken in Broad Daylight.
Okay, hold on.
Yeah.
There's so much that's being woven into.
It's ambiguous and vague. Yeah. It's so they licensed a song for me to have playing on her car radio while she's being taken. So she's getting in her car and I can't remember if it's the car or like her headphones, but she's listening to this song.
Either way, Brooke
So it's kind of
Waggoner's,
source music-y, which is kind of cool.
Yeah,
and James Vanderbeek comes out of nowhere in a van and takes her and is this like horrible, kidnapper.
I can't believe it.
Yeah, so they asked to use this song and they never paid me, which blows because that's a big deal.
Yes. Yeah,
and the original licensing fee was like hovering around the area that it would also cost me to get my lawyer to go in there and hunt down money. So they knew we don't have to pay up because
it does blow. And the fact that people don't say this blows.
It blows. You're an independent artist.
In the last 10 years is a tragedy on its own.
It's very important. It's very important.
Yeah, I mean, that's actually, you know what? Despite, we love Dawson and the fact that he ruined your career. That may or may not. But the reality is the thing that is amazing about that in a bad way is because, like you said, especially now in 2013, that's how a lot of writers, artists make a good source of their income is through placements like that, and to be immortalized in a Lifetime movie,
right?
To that level, to feel like you've really achieved everything you could ever want to achieve, and then not be rewarded for it. To have James Vanderbeek right there that you.
Well, I am talking with BMI affiliates here right now, so it is good in that every quarter I see a little something trickle in from Taken in Broad Daylight.
Well, that's.
I think they love it in South America. Okay. It's syndicated a lot. Yeah.
Okay, all right. Well, we'll have to look into it.
It's helped a little. Yeah.
No, but seriously, hey James, thanks but no thanks. Okay, we recognize you actually had nothing to do with that, but still, you're taking the blame. But Brooke, okay, so man, hopefully. I'm crossing my fingers that it's going to be less than 5 years before we have another conversation like this.
It should.
It's been so awesome catching up.
I know. Thank you.
The album Originator is incredible. And I hope that, I'm excited for these next projects, the Nirvana cover that'll be coming out, the Johnny Cash material. And then, of course, the live album Sing to Me, which is available now. It's definitely definitely intimate. It definitely has those fragile undertones that have definitely kind of painted the landscape of your entire career. And those bonus those extra tracks, and we didn't even get a chance to speak on San Juan Capistrano, which has an incredible story that you actually talk about in the live recording. That's really cool to hear. But I would highly recommend checking this out and to be on the lookout for your future projects. So, Brooke, I'll let you get back to watching your favorite season of Friends. And
thank you. We're on season 10 right now.
Getting back to Arrested Development and
the cool stuff.
Double feature with some Grey's Anatomy.
I've got my Doris Day box set over there. I'm like 80.
Yeah. So, but no, Brooke, it's been a pleasure. Thanks so much for taking the time, and
thank you, Brad.
Good luck with taking over Asia.
Cool. Thanks.